Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good. You're looking good, Jeff.
Oh, God. That's right. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, I tried to get in a place where we can not have too many distractions. I always like to have something behind me, but I don't know. It just depends on how you want to, if it matters or not.
It doesn't matter. I'm in my office,
All
so
right. All right.
to be collegiate or whatever it is. So good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. It's so good to see you too. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a trip.
I can
It's been a
believe
real trip.
Give
6 weeks.
give us the class a little hint as far as what life has been like for you at this point working with Sony Music.
Yeah, you mean like before the Chronopocalypse?
Give us a little before and then how you've had to adapt.
Yeah. Well, I've been working with Sony for about 24 years now, 24, 25. And it's been great. It's been a good experience, learning a lot, still learning every day. And the job changes so much. So yeah, I mean, I've been with the company, like I said, about 24, 25 years. Started out as an A&R admin assistant and then the studio coordinator, and then became a producer. And then that's where I stayed. You know, now I'm director of A&R, you know, that's the title. But yeah, my job responsibilities on the day-to-day is now digital. It's a lot of digital. I started out when it was vinyl, cassette. Then it went to MP3s and WAV files and streaming, and now that's where we've been. The whole downloading and streaming business. That's the majority of what I do now.
How are you doing all this from home without?
Very good question. You know, before everything went to hell with the coronavirus, we had a lot of projects in the queue. So the plants had like test pressings waiting for us or waiting to ship. So I'm receiving test pressings at my home. I pulled out my record player, and so it's a USB player, plays pretty well through my computer. So I listen to it like that. But working from home now, I mean, luckily the company, Sony, had us all go on to Teams, Microsoft Teams, and that's been a lifesaver. We do team meetings every day, video conferencing, more than we've ever done it before. I was really hesitant because I was never used to it. I like the day-to-day thing, but video conferencing and everything kept us in touch, and we still talk to everybody. So yeah, it's still business as usual. Really, it's busy. I think working from home for me, it's more than 8 hours a day, and I try to shut it off. I really do, but it's now. I think now that they're really getting their money's worth. So I'm up till like at least 2, 3 in the morning, just doing stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? And just because it's still busy. We're still doing a lot of work, and I can give you guys some tips on what I'm working on because I didn't expect the business to still be going up as well as it has.
Give us the tips now before we get off track. Questions here for you, but do that right.
Sure. You know what I'm finding fascinating? If you want a tip, the TV and movie industry has not stopped. Believe it or not, I mean, they're in production. I'm getting so many audio requests from the sync department. Just basically, part of my job is to supply sources, to supply research. If for example, HBO is doing a documentary on the 1930s, you know, they're still requesting their music, even though our vaults are closed because of COVID, their business is still going. Mm-hmm. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not about the music industry per se, like at a record company. You got to keep your options open for sync opportunities, movie production houses, TV production houses. They're still operating. They still want their licenses. They still want their music for their programs. That's blowing me away. I'm getting more requests on that end than I am from my regular music clients.
Do you find that in this industry right now, sync licensing is a big deal rather than the concept of selling a product of a CD or vinyl?
Yes. Sync is not going anywhere. Sync is artists are not looking at it as selling out anymore. It's a business. It's getting their music out to a different audience, a different usage. I mean, of course, the artist always has the final say. Like, look, I don't want my music used for this particular movie or product. But sync licensing is huge. And the thing about it is, there's really no kind of restriction on the amount of money an artist can request for a sync license. You know, it just depends on the value, literally, of the value of the music and how much the studios or the film company wants to pay for it, and how much they really want that particular music for their film. It's pretty amazing.
All right, good, thank you. So I have some questions from some students. You gave a little background, just so that everybody knows you are Director of A&R at Sony Legacy. Tell me a little bit about, before I get this, about Sony Legacy, because I'm always like, catalog is the big thing now.
Yeah, it sure is. It's what people are listening to. It's what people are streaming. Put it this way: there are two parts of A&R that people don't tend to realize. Of course, there's always the front part, which is the signing of the bands, the seeing the bands. That's Sony's mainstay. You know, for us to thrive as a company, we have to sign artists that are relevant, that are going to make the money. Make the company money. Of course, that's the main focus. But then on my end, when an artist, for example, Pink, who's amassed 7 to 8 albums, the catalog is now on the back end, because the frontline labels like RCA are going to focus on any new projects. Right. So like Legacy will make sure that the digital profile is correct, the Spotify's and the playlists, and keeping that artist catalog alive, making sure that any remixes or any singles that have not made the album, for example, they do like radio mixes and all these different stuff. We make sure that's available on the digital services. And we'll take an example like an artist like Bob Dylan, who's still a current artist who's signed to Columbia, just released a new song last Friday. Columbia will still handle that, but it's important for Legacy to take care of his back catalog, making sure that the essential collections and anything that's older than what's currently released now is available and in good shape.
And congratulations, the Dylan Legacy stuff is jaw-dropping.
Oh, it's so good, man. I mean, what an artist. His songwriting is always so relevant and so topical, and and in this case, we definitely need something like that to kind of wake us all up. You know, it's so important.
Yeah. Okay, so some student questions. Why did you pick and work for Sony?
How
did that start?
Great question. Well, you know what? My journey started out. I'll definitely get to Sony. My journey started out in Profile Records in the mailroom. Typical story. I worked my way in. That was my first job in the industry in the mid-90s. And just like being in the industry and talking to other people throughout every company, I've always been told the best people always end up at Sony. I mean, that's always a thing. It was always like, you know, you get all your experiences from all these different companies, but you always end up at Sony. So that's what I had in my mind. That's the mindset that I wanted. But I did apply to a lot of companies. I applied to, Warner and Universal, and at the time it was Polygram. But and I worked at Atlantic for about 6 months, and that didn't work out too well. And so when I sent my resume to Sony, I had a few interviews, and they didn't have anything open, but they did offer me a per diem spot in the accounting royalties department. A per diem is it's per day, no benefits, hourly rate, almost like a in-house temp. And it was a 6-month assignment. They give you assignments. It could be a year, 6 months. And after 6 months, of course, when I was in the company, it's so important. Once you get your foot in, you got to still, network with people, be respectful, also look at the job postings. So I would still kind of submit my resume, because they know that you're a temp or it's a per diem, and it's almost like you're expected to kind of do that. So when the A&R admin assistant position opened up, I applied for it, I interviewed, and I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if any advice, again, is the A&R admin is such a great thing to look for. It's all the back end stuff. It's all like the data entry, the setup of tracks, which now they call metadata, which is so important to like getting the artist paid and streaming information. It's really a good place to start. It gives you an idea like how the company works before you start signing these, artists.
Mm-hmm. Another question: how do you think your college experience, clubs, and your major and all prepare you?
Yeah.
For your current position?
Yes. Okay. That's also great because I went to Fredonia in 1987 to 91. So talk about being in the beginning of everything. We had to go to the learning center to do our work. Emailing was actually an assignment that Ted Schwalbe had given us. I mean, literally, we had to go. That was one of our assignments. We had to go to the learning center and email him a question. And so back then, Fredonia was more of an educational school. There was not very many music business colleges or music business programs that at least I could afford. So, but Fredonia had a music business program, in quotes, but their music business program was more about performance. So in my first 2 years, I took there was ensemble credit, so I had to sing in the choir. I tried to do piano, I tried to do guitar, and I tried to do theory, but that wasn't me. So I tried to make it work, and so I eventually changed my major to communication media. But back to your question, being in college is so important. You got to take advantage. So knowing that I wanted to get into music, I made my focus music-centric in everything I did. I joined The Leader. I became their music critic. And they didn't have one before, so I did music reviews. I joined Spectrum to get an understanding of Spectrum to get an understanding of how concerts work. And of course, radio station, my first love, WCVF. I was a DJ. I eventually became music director of the AM to understand how music works from radio promotion and talking to music directors and talking to all these people in the industry, college record promoters. So everything I did, I want to make sure that even though it wasn't technically offered as a music business course, that I made it music business. My business law class, I made sure to write all my papers that pertain to music business issues. One of the papers I wrote was parental guidance stickers. Is that infringing on our First Amendment rights? That's right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
at that time,
it was right to remember that. I mean, that was a big deal. So I made sure to write a paper about that and anything. I mean, economics is economics, but you always want to do mentally prepare yourself to make everything you do music centric. That's what I did, and that's how I prepared myself for the industry and internships. Huge.
You're familiar with our student record label.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about your viewpoint of that and how that will help a student transition.
I love the idea of any college that offers a record label experience in college. I did not have that. I didn't have that. We didn't have that in 1987, 91. I believe after I graduated, I think Miami had a version.
Mm-hmm.
I think Syracuse, and I think Howard. But anyway, I can't even imagine working at a college radio or college music record label. I mean, the experience is invaluable. Think about it. You have all these great college bands that you could sign. You could do so many different things. You can upload to Spotify. It's immeasurable. And to have that on your resume, think about it. To have that on your resume saying that Hail Fredonia Records or whatever record company, because it is a record company. You're doing the record company things. You're doing the curriculum.
What's happening is it has changed, and this is something that you can address. We originally were doing lots of records and all this kind of thing, and signing bands and all that. But we noticed there was no interaction So we started doing community events such as our dog walk and party gras and things like that, and then getting bands to come in and perform to bring them to bring. We're going to have an event to bring people in to hear the music.
Got it.
Tell us what you think about this concept.
I like it. You know, because it's a good opportunity for the band's exposure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the band doesn't have music prior to that, there's always playlist opportunities, you know, to do on Spotify. But I just think socials, and now especially with like TikTok and Instagram and all these other options of how people can consume music, it's fine, because content is key. I mean, you could record these bands doing their stuff and then later use it in different bits online. So yeah, no, it's all good. It's all about making sure there's exposure and people can somehow access and consume whatever this band is performing. So yeah, that still works too.
It's always tough for a new band to break into the world now. Before, the major labels were doing it. They were taking care of everything. Now there's a glut out there. How does a new artist, someone just starting out from the bottom, how are they going to market themselves?
So, you know what? I think someone had told me, or I read somewhere about a few years ago, there's no time to be in the business like now. I mean, there's so much music, but yet how do you find? It really is persistence. And I got to be honest, I just joined the TikTok. I'm not a TikTok user. I think I'm way too old for that, but it's cool. But I need to understand it because it's breaking some of these artists. So, I mean, TikTok and socials, you know what? And you bring up a great point. It's not about the label, because the label actually wants the artist to come prepared and to come with social numbers and to come with like their followers and to be almost established on their own before they really get signed. There's really no more artist development. It's a shame, but we're trying to get back to that. Don't get me wrong. We're definitely trying to get back to that, but it helps the cause when you can show that, look at my numbers on my SoundCloud or my Instagram, and definitely TikTok is just, it's just amazing. Think about it though, like 15 seconds, and you know, and the whole amount of plays that people are seeing. It's just another way to get your music heard. But yeah, it's a lot of groundwork, man. It's still a hustle. It really is.
What advice would you give? We have our music marketing class.
Yeah.
What advice would you give us to help best get artists out there? Because it has been very difficult for the students to reach out and get attention. And we've even had, we've had young bands, we've had all kinds of music, everyone, even from 10,000 Maniacs to Denny Lane from Wings and things like that. How social media platforms, whatnot.
That's good. Do you guys engage? I mean, does anyone handle your content creators, like really kind of cool visuals, kind of really good flashy type of social stuff? I mean, does anyone do that for you guys?
We do, yes. It's part of the class of people learning how to do it.
Yeah. No, that's important because they go hand in hand. I mean, you got to capture the audience visually first. I mean, like we have a whole marketing department that handles that does socials and is always looking for content to engage the consumer. I mean, I would say just making sure that you have a schedule, a definitely plan of attack. Like, look, we're going to release this amount of content every 2 or 3 days or whatever, and make sure the schedule is consistent, and then you start building a fan base. Instagram is still very huge to use, and also I don't know, I still believe in Spotify too, and making sure that the music is available, but I'm thinking more. I mean, a lot of attention's been placed on having a great social presence. So if you kind of create, it doesn't even, the band doesn't even have to be involved. You think about it. Definitely YouTube is a source. I mean, lyric videos are very cool. I mean, there are different ways of doing things to capture people's attention.
All right. Someone asked a question here. What should we focus on during our time in college?
Okay. Yeah. Well, definitely being involved with the campus activities. Definitely being involved with the record company that you guys have. Also understanding trends. I find it so important. I don't know if the library. Do you guys still get Billboard? Is there a subscription to Billboard at the library at Maidum?
I don't think so, but I can check on that. I think we're tight money-wise here.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I think that's such a great investment. I know that everything's online, maybe an online subscription. I'm still old school. I still love to read, but it's just like making sure you understand the trends and understanding what's charting and keeping up with that, because the charts are really changing. Every week there's something new, and you want to understand why. If it's a cultural moment, if it's hitting, and why is it resonating with why is it charting? I mean, that's one thing, but understanding understanding the I guess going out to the bars, but the clubs. I don't know if there's a lot of live still music.
Actually, we actually have students that are booking. Remember BJ's?
Yeah.
Actually booked that.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. No, of course, your grades are still very important. But I think becoming active within like the radio station, the TV station. I also want to mention that too. I joined the TV station. I created a TV program. I used to film at the Sundowner. So I had like a live TV show, and so yeah, everything. I just try to be involved in every aspect, so you can pad or put on your resume like, look, this is what I've done in addition to school.
All right, let's get on to the concept of social media, obeying the rules, cell phones.
Yeah.
What can happen to you out in the real world with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no doubt. Any advice to your students? Honestly, you got to watch your socials. You got to watch your own personal accounts. You either set it to private, or just make sure if you're going to have a public account and if you're applying for a job, that it represents you well, because this is going to be a criteria for HR people to check. I mean, you are applying for a job, and they do a search on you. Why not? I mean, it's one of those things. And with the competition in the business, you don't want something like your social account to backfire and keep you out of consideration. And believe me, HR, they look. People look. So you got to watch that.
Any good stories of firings of people violating any type of rules or anything like that? Give us some.
Yep. I do. I was working with this lady, this girl, in social marketing, and she was brilliant. She had come from BET, and she was at Sony, and she had gotten this job offer. I would say she'd gotten the job at Universal, and of course she's excited, and she's psyched to do this and become like this whole social digital director. But she went on her Instagram account and basically made a press release for herself, touting her skills, touting that she was hired by, Universal, just basically giving herself props. I mean, and saying how great she was and all that. And Universal, they caught wind of it, and they read it, and they rescinded the offer. They felt that it was irresponsible. They felt that they, as the company that hired you, were the ones that are supposed to send a media or a press release, if you want to call it, that they wanted to make the announcement. And they thought that if you cannot control your own, your own information or your own media account, how do you expect to control anything that one of our artists might want to do. You know, it's
Mhm.
proprietary information. It really is. And she had done all this before the ink was dry or whatever. I mean, she was already in the office, and it's just heartbreaking. And I just felt for her because she was a pretty brilliant girl, but that wasn't a smart move at all. I mean, and again, they do check, and so you always got to keep in mind, I mean, it's your personal account, but whenever you're talking about your business or about the company, it's their assets, it's their artists, it's their commodity, it's everything, and that kind of stuff can't leak. It can't. It's so important because it goes viral really quickly. You know, and they have to control it and have that. But yeah, that's a heartbreaker right there. That's the one thing that yeah.
I've started a new policy in my classes. You walk through the door, your cell phone goes off, and you cannot use it in class, and you cannot use it, until you leave. Tell me what you think of that policy.
I like it. No, you should, because you want to have total concentration on what you're doing. I mean, if you can't stop for how long was the class? An hour and a half or an hour? I think that policy, I know that policy is good. I mean, of course, at work you have it, and you get an important phone call, great. But I know for me, I'm not on the phone during the day unless I get a call, or if I want to check something online, if I want to check how, like for example, I manage a Spotify account. I want to check how it looks on the mobile. If you want to use it like to not communicate, or do you want to check to see how things appear, that's good. But once you're texting and doing all that, you can't concentrate. You can't do that.
All right. A couple of people ask, this is going to be a rough one. What is a typical workday like for you?
Oh yeah, no, it's that's a no, a typical workday, man. It changes, but I get up, I'll make sure to check, like right now I'm getting into checking the back end of Spotify playlists to see what works and what doesn't work. Definitely a lot of meetings, a lot of planning. My A&R responsibilities include talking to the different estates. I help manage the Whitney Houston estate with their assets. Mm-hmm. So we have conference calls with them, Luther Vandross, but also just a lot of like digital research on certain anniversaries. Most of my time is spent on looking up the anniversary of the artist. Like right now, our big campaigns are going to be Britney Spears. It's going to be the 20th anniversary of Oops, I Did It Again this year. Mm-hmm. We also have Christina Aguilera's 20th anniversary. Pink is going to have an anniversary in a year or so for her album Misunderstood. Then we're going to head into Justin Timberlake. Right now it's the NSYNC anniversary of No Strings Attached. So all these things are happening, and we have to have campaigns to support it. And these are staple artists, and they have big fan bases, and we want to make sure that we can, make the fan base happy and supply them with things that might not have been available before. So yeah, it's a big process.
Sounds it. Your role models. Who were your role models? Who was your inspiration to get into all this?
I love that. You know what? I love that question because I tend to speak at my job with the interns, and I always say, if you want to know where you're going, you have to understand where the past is. So my inspiration, I can tell you right off the bat, was Jelly Bean Benitez. He was a DJ in the 80s, worked with Madonna. I mean, I wanted to be a DJ. I wanted to be a remixer, because of him. Then when I realized that I didn't have the ears or the technology for like the whole studio situation, that wasn't me. So then I started looking at like executives, because I want to be an executive. So Clive Davis, Sylvia Rhone, there was L.A. Reid, Babyface. I mean, these are the guys that I looked up to like understand like how to work in a business. Russell Simmons.
Mhm.
So it's so important to like understand like how they did. Rick Rubin. I mean, I can go on. I mean, and these guys, these names are still in the business and still doing the thing. And understanding how they worked and their work ethic kind of helped me kind of shape what my passions. So yeah, I think having role models or having people that you can look up to and understand how their paths work is so important.
Technology, it
Yeah.
has had quite a swing because you entered the industry when the whole digital revolution started.
Yeah.
Vinyl went out for a while. Now it's back. Tell us a
Yeah.
little about how you releases in technology and how the technology has changed and how you market.
Yeah. No. That's a great question. It's okay. I always try to break it down in simple terms. Music is going to be always music. You always have to think how people are going to consume it. That's what changes. It's how people are actually able to get it. I wasn't mad at Napster. Think about it. At the time when Napster came out, a lot of that stuff was not available. I mean, where are you going to find a 12-inch remix of the Cure, for example? Where are you going to find at that time? 12-inch remixes or vinyl like mixes were not available, but yet this peer-to-peer, this Napster, put it together for people to share music. I think the mistake was, and I think the labels understand it now, is that instead of fighting it, we should have embraced it and understood how to work with them and how to get, understanding the peer-to-peer network, how to understand it. I mean, if we would have done that, there might not have been Apple coming in to step in and revolutionize the industry. But you know what? We worked with that, and it worked out for the best because the iPod was what housed all these digital files. So again, it goes back to consumption. So yeah, technology, working with technology, and I believe going forward, we're more open to working with technology. I mean, we tried everything to stop sharing. Do you remember the DRM and the copy protect CDs
I remember that.
awful idea. But and we learned from it. So but now hopefully I'm answering your question. Now with the vinyl, which is great, I'm finding you have two types or more than two types of vinyl consumers. You have the audiophile that really loves collecting and kind of has this high-end turntable and really loves the pleasure of vinyl. And you have the other consumers that like it because it's something physical and something like a collector's item where you can actually feel it and touch it and actually read the information like I used to do. That's what I loved about vinyl. And I think the biggest thing about it, and I really believe that the vinyl now, at least how I take it, it sounds so, we try to make it sound so good because we have to. I get test pressings to my apartment now so I can listen for pops and clicks and surface noise. But before CD, that's all vinyl was. It was pops, clicks, and surface noise. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, of course that wasn't the norm per se, but we had no other choice. If we got it, we could return it. Hopefully the pressing was good and you get another a good pressing. But a friend of mine had bought an album, had returned an album I think 5 times because it skipped in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I understand why, because the plating at the plant probably had a defect, unfortunately. But back then, pressing, and you can catch that all in the test pressing phase. So when I listen to a test pressing, I listen for that stuff, but I also make sure that the surface noise is minimum and the quality is good. So yeah. So in a way, I'm trying to hold vinyl music at a higher standard than CD, which if you think about it is impossible because CDs are zeros and ones and vinyl is friction with the needle. So it's just, I go back and forth, but I love the way vinyl sounds. No matter what people say and they think, it's just, there's definitely a warmth to it, and I place that on just friction, physics, science, that it creates this sound that's not like CD.
And the vinyl releases you guys have been putting out have been amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of the biggest consumers of them, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a good question.
Yeah.
What mistakes have you made along your way in your career path?
Yeah, that's great. You learn from your mistakes, and I make no faults of that now. You got to. I got fired. I'll tell you. I think I've told you the story before. After I worked in the mailroom for Profile Records, I got a job at Atlantic Records. It was my big opportunity. I couldn't believe I applied for what they called artist relations. It wasn't A&R at the time, but they had Atlantic specifically separated this department out. It was part publicity, part artist relations, media.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there, but yeah, I was there, and I was there for 6 months. I was let go after 6 months only because I wasn't ready, and the mistakes I made there was not asking questions. I even though I believe in trying to do things on my own, but it's so important because, for example, the main computer at the time on my desk was the server for the floor. So when I crashed, it crashed everybody's computer. So I had to, and if you don't tell anybody that it's crashing, their work is lost. So, my first mistake was not alerting everybody when I should have, and that kind of stuff. So you learn from that. I mean, that was a big lesson, and not afraid to go back to your previous job. Like after I got let go from Atlantic, working at Profile Records in the mailroom for 3 years, that's why I left. I called up a friend of mine and said, "How's it going over there?" And I told her my situation, and they hired me back at a higher wage than I was at Atlantic Records. So, yeah, I just don't be afraid to own your mistakes. I mean, that's the one thing that I learned from. Trying to think of anything else. Mistakes. No, I think that's the big one. Just making sure that you speak up, and if you don't know, find the answer, ask your questions, do your research. I mean, the internet's a good thing now. You can do a lot of YouTube tutorials too, but yeah. I mean, it's out there, but don't pretend that you know something that you know.
Do you have a team of people working under you? Or
Yeah. I work with a team, and actually, the encouraging thing is that our A&R team grew, and I think that's going to be so good for people that are wanting to get into A&R, because now A&R, for example, my responsibilities is called audio A&R. Mm-hmm. I do all the tape research. I do everything like vault ordering, and like on the audio aspect, any kind of like data behind the audio. Well, our department now developed visual A&R, which is the same thing, but it's content. It's making sure that we have videos on certain songs, and making sure that we have to up-res, which that's going to be a big thing too. These videos back in the day in the 80s and 90s, they were shot at the top of the technology. Well, now we have 4K. If you have the original master or the original film, you can go back and you could upgrade it to 4K, which just looks incredible. Take a look at the Whitney Houston video, Greatest Love of All, and that's what we've been doing. So right there, that's another business side of A&R that didn't exist a few years ago. Just restoring these classic videos so it looks good when we go to HD. So we have a team. We have now a team of people that optimizes the assets, making sure that the right words, the right phrases and back end stuff. Like, so when you ask Alexa, play me the top hits of the 80s, our songs come up. That's going to be that's another huge area. If you guys can figure out the algorithm on how to make a company's music appear in the top of any kind of AI searches, you're golden, because that that's one equation we haven't yet figured out. And we're trying different things, but how do you get your music to play? I mean, there are many top hits of the '80s, but what makes Universal's music pop up before Sony? So yeah, no, we have a team and it's growing, which is really, really good. But you know what? You got to think about it in technological terms. But music's always going to be music. It's always going to be passion. But you always got to understand that now technology plays a huge part.
Someone asked a question, if you have a toxic team or if there's someone toxic in the team, how do you deal with it and how do you root them out?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, man. That's a problem. um, you know, okay. You know what? Yeah, actually, that is a fantastic question because I tell you, it goes by, honestly, demographics. I deal with toxic people a little different than what the new generation does. And I've noticed the kids in our office, or the younger people, I should say, they will call you on it. They will. And I think, I know, if someone's being toxic, you got to call them out on it right there. I mean, without embarrassment. There's places where you can take them aside and look. I'm not too sure on how you meant it, but I perceived it as this. It's always communication. I mean, right now, especially working from home, my direct report, my boss is like, we're in a stage where you have to now over communicate. Not about emails. It's about getting on the phone or getting on the video chat and explaining yourself and trying to understand what the other person was getting at. So yeah, I mean, and so I think, no, I know that's an approach that we should take. You just got to, because it's like a cancer, and it will grow, and you can't get any work done, and you have to understand why this person is acting this way. So yeah, you got to confront it, or confront is a harsh word. You have to just pull the person aside, or just talk about it and see why they're acting this way. So yeah.
All right. How do you pick? Do you have any particular projects and all that you are that you like more than other projects?
I do. Right now, I've been no. Right now, I was assigned. We have a pop marketing initiative. We actually have two. I'll explain both of them. One of them is called Pop Struck. Pop Struck basically concentrates on the music from the 90s and beyond, because that's where they see the most interaction, they see the most numbers, and I love that, because that's the era that I grew up basically loving music. And the 90s consisted of like of course Britney, Christina, Backstreet, and beyond. And now we're getting into the 2000s, which will have Kesha, Pink. So I'm going to be managing the Pop Struck playlist and seeing what songs resonate with the audience. The other one is we're working on an LGBTQ plus platform where we're going to market specifically the music to that genre, to that segment. And instead of it being just Pride Month, or it being just 1 month out of the year, they want to do a full year of which artists can be marketed. It's all about marketing and all about making artists available to people. You don't necessarily have to ram it down people's throats or anything like that, but it's just an opportunity for us to present music to a different audience. So yeah, those are the two platforms that I'm really looking forward to working on.
What skills should students concentrate on in college before they head into the music industry?
Oh, that's great, man. Multitasking. You got to do it. I know it's tough, but you really got to understand that there's so many things happening all at once. You have to be task oriented, but you have to understand, just be organized, but being able to multitask and understand that everything you do will affect another department. You can't work in a bubble.
Mhm.
So you should prepare yourself that way. What other things? Understanding the whole digital uh, platform, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon especially. Amazon's coming out with some really great stuff. That I tell you that the Amazon AI, Alexa, and all that stuff is so important to understand because that's how people consume music. So you should understand how that works and just to understand the whole business structure of the industry.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you want to share to the students? We've been going at this for about 45 minutes. Do you have anything you
Oh,
want
I
to
know. I
share?
love this. First of all, God, thank you, Armand. You've been such a champion for this whole program. I love helping out the alumni as much as I can. One of my phrases is, I mean, I can show. Okay, this is very important. I can show your students or the alumni the door, but they got to step through it, and they gotta like push through it. I can only do so much, only because the competition is so tough, and recommendations from inside is always good, but HR and the people that are hiring always have someone else or choice in mind. It's just that's how it works. It could be a previous intern. That's why internships are so important. It could be unfortunately the son of a high executive. I mean, there's nepotism. I mean, it is what it is. But it's you always got to be prepared. I When I graduated in 1991, there was a recession. It was awful. It's almost like time is repeating itself, and you have to be prepared that you might not get that job outside. Sorry, seniors, but you might not get that job right away. We had a town hall meeting today, which was really informative, and from our head of our department, and he told us straightforward that there are hiring freezes right now. Our department, I don't know if it's company wide, but our department will not hire anybody until December. We have to reevaluate our numbers because of the situation of COVID-19 pandemic, because people are not consuming music as much as they are. Believe it or not, you would think you're inside and you'd be consuming music, but you'd be amazed. You got to look at it from a whole United States standpoint. People commute. Commuting is huge. People in cars contribute a lot to music consumption. That's what blew my mind. So people are not driving, people are not consuming music. And also what was evaluated is that people with different Spotify accounts, like your son or your daughter or your sister, your brother, you have 5 different Spotify accounts or music accounts in one house. If you're all together, I mean, sure, you can go separate and go to your room, but most of them are now saving that money from subscriptions and using one Spotify account or one digital account. So you got to think of these things, because you got to think about what happens when we have a situation where people can't consume your music. So, but we're still trudging ahead, and we're still doing a lot of great online content, and we're still, trying to put it out. I mean, we still have artists like Fiona Apple who demanded or thought that it was very important for her album to come out now, and it's becoming a huge success. She recorded it in her home studio. Literally, her whole home is now a studio, and it worked for her. But some artists rather wait till after, because touring is huge. It goes hand in hand. I'm sorry, Armand. I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with this. What was the original question?
The question was advice to the students as far as when
the student.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. So if you can't get that job right away, you got to still keep involved musically. Like when I didn't get a job in 91, I made sure to write articles for music magazines. I became a freelance journalist. And at the time, that's what we had. We had Tower Magazine, Tower Pulse, which Tower Records had their own magazine. So I freelanced for that. I freelanced for a lot of local papers. And I would get paid, I would not get paid, but at least I can put in my resume that I was very active. I remained active in music. Think about it now with all the blogs and all your personal websites and everything. I mean, you could create your own blog and just be a music writer and say, look, this is what I've been doing. And so if you don't get the job right away, you got to remain musically active somehow. And that's your task. Just keep on becoming, because you cannot let a year, a month go by with a blank space when you graduate until this whole thing gets over. I mean, at least when you graduate, you can put in your resume, freelance journalist, freelance blogger, music. You know what I'm saying. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Keep that in mind. Yeah, that's my advice to anyone now.
All right, Jeff.
Wow, man.
Thank you,
bro. I hope this helped.
Oh, it's a huge help.